Imagine riding through the valley or the high mountain road, or somewhere along the ocean where the motor wants to go. You've been talking about this day forever. Now you know it's time to take that ride down the road, the one that'll ease your mind. Places that you've never seen before, on the ultimate motorcycle show.
Hey everybody, get ready to meet Tony Sanfelipo, aka Pan. Tony's an original founding member of ABATE of Wisconsin and has been a driving force behind the motorcycle rights movement in this country for a very long time. He's also the first inductee into the Motorcycle Freedom Fighters Hall of Fame in Sturgis. Sit back and get a great lesson in rights history and motorcycling. Tony Sanfelipo. Tony, how you doing?
Pretty good. I want to clear something up because a lot of people call me Pan because I ride panhead motorcycles. I've been riding them since the 60s. But there's a small segment of my group of inner circle people that said I was named Pan because I was known to frolic with the wood nymphs and drink a little bit too much wine. So you can use either you can use either one.
Yeah, no, that's okay. I understand that. I understand that you were one of the original founding members of ABATE, and ABATE has been instrumental for years in allowing us our freedoms and in the way we ride motorcycles. And I'd like for you to elaborate a little bit on that early history, what motivated you to get into it, and kind of just go along and show us how this is.
Well, I was a founding member of ABATE of Wisconsin, but ABATE, the organization, the national organization, started back in 1971. Started out of Easy Rider magazine. Lou Kimsey started that magazine, and in issue 1, I have copy 1 or issue 1, there's no mention of ABATE, or you can say ABATE or ABATE. It took him 4 issues. It was issue number 4 that he figured out that there's a lot of government encroaching upon our rights as motorcyclists, and this was a motorcycle magazine. And in the 4th issue, you heard the first mention of ABATE, and he decided to put together some kind of an organization where the bikers would have some kind of a sounding board through the magazine, and it would act as a watchdog across the country. And the various states would be sending in news clips or contacting the magazine to let him know what was going on in the particular state that they lived in. And that's how ABATE actually started. It was actually through the magazine, and then it evolved into a membership organization. But it was exciting in those days because you have to remember we had just come out of the 60s and we were in the early 70s now. Vietnam War was going on, a lot of protests, and it was an era where a lot of people were saying, you know what, we don't want the things that the government's doing for whatever particular reason. Some people were pro-war, some people were against the war, but there was protests going on all over, like, you know, Hooray for Our Side, the Buffalo Springfield song. So everybody was carrying signs and saying hooray for our side. Our side was we didn't want the government telling us what to do as far as our motorcycles were concerned. When Easy Rider started, it started on the boot heels, if you want to call it, of the Modified Motorcycle Association that was already going on in California. And that started up primarily because the government was saying you couldn't bob your fenders, you couldn't share your frames, you couldn't extend the forks. They were looking at everything that people were doing to customize the motorcycles, and if it looked dangerous, they said it was dangerous. And in reality, anybody that builds motorcycles knows that the longer you put the front end out there, as long as the rake is correct, the more stable the motorcycle is. A properly raked motorcycle with a long front end is more stable on the highway than a factory bike. So it wasn't a matter of it looks unsafe, so it must be unsafe. So we started, you know, challenging some of the regulations that were coming down, over regulations.
How did you go about doing that?
Well,
how did you challenge that?
Well, we were just going out and just going to the DOT and going to hearings and things. In Wisconsin, there was something called Chapter 11 that dealt with modifications, and we weren't getting hit as hard in Wisconsin as the car clubs were, the car and van clubs. There was there was custom clubs and there was subsidy vans. They were getting hit harder because there was more of those guys out there. When I was starting to ride motorcycle, there wasn't a lot of people riding motorcycle, but there was a lot of custom cars and a lot of vans out there. So they were the ones that the cops were really going after, saying you can't do this to your frame, you can't drop the roof, you can't, the windows are too low, you know, all these different crazy things. So we partnered up with the custom car guys and the van clubs and said, hey, you know, because we knew the regulations were coming after us too. So we partnered with those guys and we started, you know, addressing those issues about long front ends.
So when we come back, I'd like for you to tell us kind of how things have evolved over the years and where you think we are now and where we need to go to from here.
Perfect.
We'll be right back.
Let me tell you how good my lawyer is. My motorcycle accident was the other driver's fault. The insurance company wasn't going to pay because I wasn't wearing a helmet. They said the law was against me. Well, my lawyer went to Madison and was publicly thanked by the governor for helping change the law. My lawyer got me almost $2 million. My lawyer? Michael Hupy.
Welcome back. We're here with Tony Sanfelipo talking about the rights movements and what they've done over the years with the ABATE organization to help us retain our rights as Americans to ride free. Tony, I think when you left off, you were telling us a little bit that they were coming down on the cars and the vans and the modifications there, and then sort of kind of buddied up with these guys and it went from there. So how have things evolved over the years, and what has ABATE been able to do to fend off some of the restrictions, if you will, that the government was trying to put on?
Well, when we got ABATE chapters starting up across the country, they started becoming membership-driven organizations, where at first they weren't. It was just like one person that was the eyes and ears of his state reporting back to the magazine. Then they started becoming membership, and the thing that, the catalyst that put us all together, or that caused ABATE to start in the first place, was the helmet law, mandatory helmet law, that came out of the Safety Act of 1966. It was a really broad safety act that had lots of things in it. In fact, there was 13 points or 13 things that were addressing motorcycle safety. But out of those 13 issues, and those 13 points, and I don't even remember what they all are, the only one that they really enforced or really went after was the mandatory helmet part. And that's, of course, whenever you say mandatory to a freedom-loving motorcycle guy, we don't like the M word. So we started fighting that. And a lot of people complained about the government enacting these helmet laws. I say the mandatory helmet law was probably the best thing the government ever did to the motorcycle community, because it brought us all together. Before that happened, I didn't know who was riding in Illinois. I didn't know who was running anything in Michigan or on the East Coast or the West Coast. I was in my little tiny, microcosm here in Wisconsin. Once that helmet law became an issue, a national issue, we started conversing with other states. Hey, what are you guys doing in Illinois? What are you guys doing in Michigan? Midwest, I think, is the strongest area for freedom fighters. We kicked the crap out of the helmet laws, and we've kept them out, where other states and other areas took a long time to get rid of their helmet laws, or they got rid of them and they came back to haunt them again. Midwest has really stayed strong. It's the heartland of the country. And we talked about, that was a protest era, the 60s and the 70s. We didn't like.
Where are you now with ABATE, and what do you think were and you gave us a real good example of what one of the really great achievements have been. What are you struggling with now that you think is a real important issue that we should come together around and support the ABATE organizations?
Well, we're struggling with the same things, basically, that we were struggling 40 years ago when we started ABATE. And basically, if you look at the articles, the news articles, or look at some of the issues back in the middle 70s, and some of the arguments that we're bringing forward, those still all apply today. They're still trying to put a mandatory helmet law on there. They're still fighting noise ordinances. That's nothing new. That's been going on since the 70s. They're still fighting associations. We fought all of that stuff back 40 years ago. The tactics have changed a little bit. The organizations have become a little bit more professional, more business-like. They got people that know how to type and use computers. So, yeah, we didn't have that stuff back then, but we had to rely on the old dial telephones, but we communicated through that way, and through snail mail. We stayed in touch with each other. But the organizations, as sophisticated as they are today, much more sophisticated than we were, they're fighting the same battles. And the number one enemy that we face, and it's a common enemy, and it's always been the same, is the government encroachment and regulation. They want to control our lives. They want to. It's a protectionist state. They think that they have to step in and protect us from ourselves. And we're still fighting those same issues today.
So how is ABATE working together in a national context that really holds and creates a cohesion? Do you feel like there is a cohesion amongst all of the ABATE chapters across the country? And
there is, and I think the reason for that is that the Motorcycle Riders Foundation started. We tried to form a national ABATE for years, and there was a lot of bickering, a lot of infighting, a lot of disconnects, a lot of disagreements, and we could never get a real solid national ABATE. We had our country basically in districts, but the ABATE chapters would bicker and quarrel and who's going to run this, who's going to be in charge of that. Mike Faribault Balls from Indiana and Wanda Hummel and a few other people got together, Bill Gannon from Connecticut or Massachusetts, got together and they formed something called the Motorcycle Riders Foundation, and all of a sudden, boom, it all clicked. And really, if you really look at it, it's the National ABATE. They just changed the name. It's what we were trying to do all along.
We'll catch up with Tony in a future episode on the history of MROs, ABATE, and motorcycle rights movement in his country in another episode.
All too often, we see bikers injured and then blamed for an accident that wasn't their fault. When you go down, you're up against a big insurance company that wants nothing less than to give you a low ball offer. I'm attorney Jason Abraham of Hupie & Abraham. We don't put up with insurance company tactics. We go after every dollar you deserve for your injuries. If you've been injured in a motorcycle accident, tell them you mean business. Call 800-800-5678 and we'll put our knowledge and experience on your side.